Cool. All right. Play the intro music. Let's hear it.
Okay. Oops, that's not the one I want. There we go.
Very intro-ish. Oh yeah, there it is. Turn it up a little bit. Oh yeah. Welcome everybody. This is Musicworks, Real Music Talk session 306. We're here with the amazing Rob Jost, who brings his own intro music. Rob, tell us what we're listening to.
This is Biondo, the band led by Eric Biondo. And this is from 2012. It's our most recent recording. And only this one song was released from it. But the rest of the record is actually being mixed and mastered. Probably not quite on schedule anymore, but I mean, it's already 8 years. So I think we can take.
You know what? Knowing Biondo, he's probably working on it in his pajamas right now.
I think
cool.
he probably is.
All right, you can turn the intro music off now.
All right.
Rob Jost, we were going to call this just two guys drinking coffee, but maybe we'll talk about music too. And oh, I see a shadow creeping around. Oh, I see a hand. Does the hand have a body that belongs to it?
Yeah, that's all part of me. I just, I'm an octopus.
Rob Jost, I think the best way that I can express to you how excited I am to see you and talk to you is to just point out that I haven't left my house in like 2 weeks and I can barely get dressed, but I put on a collared button shirt for this interview.
Yeah.
I just felt like that was the thing to do. I felt like that would make it officially real. And anyway, so that's for you.
Well, that reminds me of some of the best advice I ever got was from my friend Rachel Loshak, who told me, this is years ago after a breakup, long ago. She's like, Robbie, you have to wear nice clothing.
Yeah, it's true.
And, so this is, this quarantine has a lot of difficult moments, but if I'm wearing a button-down shirt, then I do feel a little bit more prepared for certain emotions.
I love it. Rob Jost, it is so good to see you. Rob is one of my dearest friends. I met him on maybe the first, if not the first day, definitely the first week of my beginning of my adult education at NYU, where he was in the jazz studies program. And since then, I can't even say how many years it's been, but you have gone on to do so many of the amazing things that we all knew you would go on to do. And you handle each one of them not only with impeccable musical taste and style and technique and decisions, but with just such a gracious attitude and an openness and a warmth, and that just totally embodies the spirit of what I think it means to be a musician, both sort of on the stage and off. So I couldn't be happier to still be working with you, be teaching with you, and be talking with you, and now to have you on one of our remote sessions for Musicworks. Welcome.
Thank you, Jesse. Wow. Yeah, I feel the same about you. It's been a wonderful 20
20 beep, 20 boop, boop. Yeah.
It's 20 something years.
It's been a minute. It's been a minute. Before we get too talky about you and what you do, I had asked you earlier this week if you could maybe share some music that you're listening to, and you gave me an amazing suggestion, which is this sheep. This sheep. I'm looking at Black Sheep by Tony Sherry. We're not up to that yet, but this song by Michael Kiwanuka.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to tell me where you found this, and then we'll play the video and we'll talk a little bit about it?
Oh God, it's strange. I've listened to it so much recently. I don't remember now the first time I heard it. It must have been the radio somewhere. I but I remember hearing his music for the first time maybe 6 or 7 years ago. His first record came on the radio, and I was really taken in by his sound, almost more so than the song that I was hearing. I was just really just floored by the sound of this band, and it is a little bit retro, but it's still very much its own thing. You know, he really digs into the Curtis Mayfield's palette of production, Marvin Gaye, and yet there's just something about it that's really his own. And then, but this song, when I first heard it, I just couldn't stop listening to it. And I don't know, it's just the. What was your original question about the song?
You're answering it. How you came to it?
Oh yeah.
And yeah. Well, let's play it. Let's play it, and then we'll talk a little bit. This is, and again, we're technologically we're learning on the fly here, so I don't know if you'll get the best sound quality. I know that the video may be a little jumpy. I'm going to play the video because it's such a beautiful video. It's really cool, if you haven't heard the song before, you definitely want to put your headphones on and turn up the volume immediately. But this is Michael Kiwanuka, You Ain't the Problem. I do this thing where I stop the music and talk, which is super annoying, but I can't help it. It's the music.
Start playing along.
It's the music nerd in me. The first sound of that horn section, like kind of overdriven and super in your face and crunchy, and like with a little bit of that reverb, is so awesome. And as a trumpet player who's always trying to make like the prettiest sound possible, it was so nice to hear how he kind of like uglied up the sound a little bit in the service of the actual the greater good. It's so cool. It's so cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Ugly beauty, like the Thelonious Monk tune.
Yeah, cool.
Makes you blind, I hope to find who I believe in. Get back in line, I can't deny myself, show me the feeling. Oh, you got me wrong, if you don't belong, live in the trouble, don't hesitate. Time heals the pain, you ain't the problem. I live the lie, love is the crime, it's you I believe in. No need.
You know, I remember you told me once that singing along with bass is one of the hardest things to do, right? That people usually sing along with pianists or with guitar, and that singing along using the higher, sort of relatively higher range of vocals and singing along with the lower range of bass is so difficult. And what I noticed here is that even though there's that like ding ding ding, the kind of rhythm guitar in the background, he's mostly singing along with the bass, which is
the warm sound of his voice with the low end of the bass is just so delicious. And I love the arrangement. You don't really hear too many songs that spend that much time getting to the vocal anymore. Right. Or at least the singles, and it just feels so exciting that they allow the band to create that space.
Yeah, and we're watching the video, but that's the actual length in the audio too. Like they leave all that sound through. Cool. All right, let's go. This is electric bass on the recording, but we're going to get a special treat acoustic bassing as well with Rob.
Blame myself, no need to die, I'm only human. I'm gone, you got to put me on. I know when you come along, don't hesitate. Time heals the pain, you ain't the problem. Point the gun that you for fun, you are the problem. I try to help myself, you are the one, do all the talking. You got me wrong, I caught you falling, I hear you calling, don't hesitate. Time heals the pain, you ain't the problem. I live the dream, I hope to be who I believe in. I used to hate myself, you got the key, break out the prison. Oh, I hope to never see time passing. Don't hesitate. Time heals the pain. You ain't the problem.
Woo! What was that?
Great modulation there. That's one of my favorite modulations because you aren't even really sure if the key changed.
Right.
There's just so much that's really mysterious about this arrangement. You know, as you can see, I've listened to it many times, but still I'm not quite sure how the sequences all go together because it almost feels like it might have been improvised, but I think a lot of thought went into it.
You know, I was just talking to Elizabeth Pupo Walker the other day, and she was talking about that band Kochema and how they have 5 percussionists and this massive wall of percussion, and that they're constantly rearranging the setup because they want different panning and stuff like that. And you can kind of hear that in the drum break. You know, the drum, all the percussion is like in service of the song, but when they have that break, you just like hear like bum 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 bum, like bouncing off all the different parts of the recording studio. The percussion break, and then like you said, I'm going to go back there to hear that modulation. So they're changing keys in this way that doesn't sound like, oh, here we go, we're changing keys, like we know how to do it, but it's just kind of like lifts it into a different kind of space.
Yeah, every move they make with the arrangement keeps lifting it. And then in the service of this message, you ain't the problem. It's just like, I think that's one of the big things for me with this song. It's just, I feel like a lot of just unconditional love coming through the song. I'm not sure where it's coming from or who it's directed to, but that message in a song, if you can find a song that gives that, then you want to stay with that song.
Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned that the idea of the technique of the song working in service of the message. That's such a great point. We'll come back to that. I want to play that that break and that key change again. Okay.
Even I used to hate myself. You got the key, break out the prison. Oh, I hope to never see time passing. Don't hesitate. Time heals the pain. You ain't the problem.
Clearly, the one thing that's missing from this arrangement is your French horn solo.
There's probably a French horn in there somewhere. It sounds like they threw everything in.
Man, I can't tell you how happy it makes me that we're like 10 minutes into this interview, you've already played 3 instruments and drank a cup of coffee. Wow, that's such a great song. So cool. Is he do you know, is he a New York guy? Is he around? Where does he live?
From England.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's all I know. You know, I remember diving somewhat deep into the Wikipedia pages, and I've forgotten everything that I read.
Oh, fair enough. You know what? I guess we could do our own half-assed internet research, but look him up, and I'm definitely going to check out some more of his records. Let's go back a second. What you said about the arrangement being in service of the message. You know, this is something that I talk to students about a lot of the time, is that really good musicians are intentional, right? These things don't just happen by accident, and they don't just happen to show off the technique, because when we're learning, we get so concerned with, you know, like, what am I saying? What's, you know, like, how do I express myself? What am I saying? And then we also get concerned with, like, how do I show what I can play, show what I know? Both of those things are super important. Your message and your technique are super important, but I think sometimes our ego gets involved, and I certainly include myself in this scenario, when we are playing or are composing, our songwriting, our arranging, whatever, becomes like a vehicle for showing what we can do. And you pointed out that everything in this arrangement is in service of the message of the song. So can you talk a little bit about that, like why you think that's important, where you see it, and how it comes into play with your music?
Yeah, I struggle with that all the time, and you know, just that idea that you spoke to of maybe feeling that ego, feeling that pressure to display something to the audience. And you know, I think that one of my favorite things about getting older, you know, as we can start to say we've known each other more than 20 years. Yeah. One of the things I love about getting older is that I'm a lot clearer on why I'm standing up on stage delivering music, or why I'm preparing for something the next day, you know, preparing music the next day. And then a lot of that technical ego seems to fall away. And then the question is, indeed, what am I trying to portray here? And, you know, as you live in the city and travel around and do music in so many different settings, that message gets a lot clearer. Like, why am I here? You know, if I'm in the studio recording for Sesame Street, I'm recording a piece of music that will be not so loud, but it'll be conveying a mood behind a very important lesson that kids all around the world are taking in. So I want to play very simply. And speaking of kids, there's one right there. There's two right there.
Hey guys.
That's Lucian and Eloise.
Do Lucian and Eloise have thoughts about your Sesame Street music, or Sesame Street in general?
It's not their favorite at the moment.
Really?
Yeah. I guess I don't push it so much in the house. They love Octonauts.
And Mighty Pups and Big Stuffins and Molly of the Nile.
And all those shows have pretty good music. I have to say, I like.
Yeah, and we also like PJ Masks and Paw Patrol to help you learn how you save the day.
Yes, that's
Paw Patrol helps you learn how to save the day, and
educational shows.
Learning how to save the day.
PJ Masks.
And also PJ Masks.
And PJ Masks. I've heard of all of those.
Octonauts helps you learn about sea creatures, and all of the songs in all of those shows are to the service of those messages. Definitely.
Yeah. And it also helps you learn about swordfishes. Swordfishes are super fast. They are fast.
That's right. Well, Lucian, Jesse, and I have a few important things to talk about. Would you guys mind going to play with Mommy for just another few minutes? Thank you.
Cameo by Lucian.
Yes.
You know what? Since you mentioned Sesame Street, let's go to that. I'm gonna put that on for a second. And
I did want to say something about
go ahead.
Hey guys. What can you?
So this is like an excellent example of real life. Rob Jost, amazing musician, talent extraordinaire, and also a parent dealing with toddlers who need to be corralled, and which I totally get.
So now I know I have to be very quick and concise with my words.
Okay.
But to the story of technique and
Oh yeah, please.
versus other priorities. I really was lucky when I was in high school. I was studying jazz, which for me meant sitting in front of a piece of paper practicing things as fast as I could, which was not. I couldn't do very fast, but and then also playing French horn in the youth orchestra, and both of those studies were very academic, involving a lot of thoughts on technique, and that could get quite lonely. So I was very lucky that I was kind of dragged into a ska band called Skiboovie and the Epitones, and it was the perfect time to be in a ska band. It was like investing in the stock market, and I don't know when, but it was just all of a sudden everybody wanted to hear ska.
Right.
And we played, and terrible as we were at first, we found ourselves in front of 200 people wherever we went, and then 300, 500, until every summer between high school and college, we were traveling around just playing in front of people doing this ridiculous dance. And it was, I didn't have to practice. I mean, we had to practice a lot as a band, but it was a very different relationship to the music, and we knew we were there to give people joy.
Right.
And that was, I would, yes, there we were.
Wow.
You can't see me pointing, but I didn't have a beard back then, but maybe you can find me in that picture.
Yeah, that's you right there.
Yeah.
There you go. Man, you look exactly the same. And so many of these guys, are, like in this, talk a little bit about the people who are in this band and what they're up to now.
Yeah. All right. Well, starting stage right there. We've got Eugene Cho, and he's very successful. He has a disco band. He's continued in the lineage of playing in large bands. He's got a band called Escort, which is a great disco band. They've been around more than a decade now.
Yeah.
And John Natchez, holding the Barry sax, also plays in that band Escort. And he has quite a career out west as a multi-instrumentalist. He plays every instrument. Really every instrument. And he's played in this band War on Drugs a lot, touring around, but he does a lot of film composing. Very successful, wonderful musician. And Hansis in the front is a wonderful, very original cartoonist.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Oh, cool.
Great artist, yeah. And he was always doing that. He did a lot of our art for our posters, t-shirts, stickers back in the day, and he's continued in that line. He lives in Boston still. I'm not entirely sure what everyone's doing, but Ben Jaffe, who looks very hip, and he's really found his way into a lot of bands. I'm trying to remember the name of his band that he's currently in, but he really has gotten the tenor saxophone into a guitar kind of a role.
Nice.
With a lot of effects and just a lot of style, and he's still being very creative with his music. Joe Wensink in the back is a father now. I think he might be back up in Boston, and I'm honestly not entirely sure what he's up to, but I know it's great. I know he's I think he's writing.
You got to talk about this guy, what Benny Hurson's been up to, and Nomadic Wax.
Nomadic Wax, yeah. He for a long time had a record label that focused on African hip hop, and he went to Senegal and really immersed himself in the Senegalese hip hop scene. He also, in order to do that, had to take summer courses at NYU to become fluent in Wolof.
Did he really?
Yes, wow. He did, and he's still fluent in Wolof.
Wow. Yeah, I remember reading and listening to some of the stuff he made. He basically went over there with like a DAT machine and just made beats and recorded people and brought it back. And then he was involved in actually trying to get some of those guys over to the US. And it's like it's one of those connections you think like, oh, that would be so cool and hipster if I went over and like met some musicians, but he like made it into a real bit of work for himself and accomplished quite a bit. And it's so amazing hearing you talk. Again, like one of the it's amazing hearing you talk about not only that all of you guys in this band were able to sort of capture this moment of like, you know, here we are, we're out of high school, like we want to do something, like, you know, like let's take our musicianship and put it together, and you went out and did all that performing, but also the trace the different career lines of where all these people have gone. And, you know, obviously there's a lot of hard work and a lot of luck involved. You know, have several people from this band who are doing like really commercially accepted and widely recognized stuff. But you know, that kind of work, it doesn't happen by accident. Like people like yourself and Eugene and Benny and John Natchez are channeling what they love about music and using that to move forward. And, you know, along with all the crappy gigs that you have and all the sort of like tedious things that you do and non-music things you do to make money in between, it's amazing what they've all accomplished and what you've accomplished. So it's really inspiring to hear that. I definitely encourage people to check out all of those things that you mentioned, all those bands. And yeah, I remember I got to play in one Skavoovie band gig, and it was like,
did you play with us at the Cooler?
I played with you at the Cooler, which is a defunct, it was like an old meat locker in the meatpacking district of Manhattan, which I think was awful, and then it was cool, and then awful again. I'm not sure what stage we caught it in, but man, that was so much fun.
Yeah.
I remember being really nervous. I was like, don't mess this up. Don't mess this up. Like, don't make Rob look bad. Don't mess this up. But everybody was super nice and friendly. And yeah, it was cool. And I've since gotten to play with a lot of those guys here and there, not as consistently as you have. But so, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's when we met. Is you're a little bit older than me, but we were the same year in school because you had been touring with Skavoovie. You just decided to go and do that. And then you showed up at NYU at the same time that I showed up with your fretless blue Ibanez, whatever it was.
Actually, that bass was, what was that company? I still have that bass because that was my Skavoovie bass. It was a bass that shouldn't have sounded good at all, but
you made it sound good.
I remember going to Guitar Center with my friend Mark Torsen, who was another really big influence on my life at the time. Sure. He was only a year older than me, but back then, a year could really feel like a generation.
Yeah.
He was really the person that encouraged me to become a musician, strangely enough. So he's worth, I feel like it's good that I mentioned him. In high school, he is a great guitarist, and I think he might still play viola. He was a great violist back in high school.
Oh, really?
And he was just super into music, very deep into it. I wanted to be a writer, and every few months he'd be like, "So, Robbie, what are you thinking? You want to do music?"
Yeah.
I'd be like, "Well, I don't know, Mark. I'm still figuring it out. I really like to write." He's like, "I'm going to do music. I finally decided that's what I want to do." I'm like, "Well, that's great for you." And then he put the pressure on. He's like, "Come on, Rob, you sound good. You know, we do a lot of things. You know, maybe you should do music." And I remember there was this one day where something happened. And I was like, "All right, Mark, I think that's a good idea." And
really, wow,
I capitulated. And I wasn't just saying that. I actually finally felt it in that moment.
Wow, that's crazy. It was just like a switch, just like turned for you. You were ready.
Yeah, I just surrendered to it. I was like, okay, all right, fine.
So here's the lesson: is just like let your viola playing friends bully you into stuff.
Yeah, it was the best peer pressure ever.
I want to, if you don't mind, I want to move over to one of your songs. You've played on a gazillion records. You have a record that you put out a long time ago called "Everything Changes," and I know that you've moved. Everything has changed in a lot of ways, so I won't spend too much time on it, but I was wondering if it'd be okay if I played one of your songs, speaking of making a switch and living in the moment. This one is called "Livin' Positive."
Sure.
And one of the reasons I want to play it is that it was actually redone by another singer in another band that you play in. And the two versions are both very similar and very different. And so I thought maybe I'd put a little bit of each one, and then we could talk about the how that song came about and how it changed and how it felt, if or how it felt different or the same being played in that other band. So here's the original version. Nope, that's not it. Here's the original version. What year was this recorded?
2005.
2005.
Living positive, how can I forgive? Cuts so hard when I'm running out of time. Living positive, that's how I could live. Oh, I know one day I'm gonna die. So wait for words to come. Wait for words to come. Wait for words to come. Speak your mind. Wait for words to come. Wait for words to come. Wait for words to come. Speak your mind.
All right, so I'm going to switch now. So now we fast forward. So that's Rob Jost, Everything Changes, which I have to say at the time, we had all seen you play in so many different bands.
Yeah.
And then you had kind of been like quietly working on this album that was mostly done in your house. Is that correct? Like you mostly recorded it by yourself?
Yeah. I mean, it would like little patches would happen elsewhere. There's some electric guitar on that song later on that I recorded at the great Teddy Campbell's house.
Then you had...
I think I recorded the upright bass at Teddy's house too, because I didn't have a good mic for upright bass.
Got it.
Yeah, he helped me with figuring out a lot of the Pro Tools stuff, and he mixed and mastered it. Michelle Casillas was my roommate at the time, who's in the band. She's the drum woman of Ursa Minor, who does the other version of that song.
Yeah, so let's skip ahead to that. So your roommate is Michelle Casillas,
yes.
And your around the corner neighbor is Rob DiPietro, who's an amazing drummer, singer, recording engineer, musician, guitar player, etc.
Yeah.
And you're also playing with Tony Scher, who's an amazing bass player, guitar player, and we'll get to more about him later. And you're in this band Ursa Minor, which is Michelle, the singer's band. And then,
these are all my dear friends. They were all in my wedding in different capacities.
And so then maybe, 10 years later, with 2005 to 2015 at least, that we get...
the Ursa Minor record took a long time to record, so this was probably recorded in 2007.
Really?
And
that early?
The record came out in 2011.
Okay.
But I think most of the songs had been recorded for it a couple years before it ever came out.
Really? Wow.
As you will see, there's an Ursa Minor record in the works to come out this year, and that was recorded almost. It'll have been 3 years since the basic tracks were laid down when that record hits the internet.
That record's gonna blow up the internet. I've heard a little tiny bits, and I'm so excited about it. We could do it. I gotta call Michelle and get her to talk to us. But all right, so here's the Ursa Minor version of this song. Let's listen to the differences. And so right away, before we even get into the main material, just the sound, the statement made by the sound. And I talk to my students a lot about this. The statement made by the sound in your recording is immediately intimate. It's acoustic guitar. You can hear your fingers on the guitar. You can hear immediately that it's recorded in like what I would call a real room. It's not in some ambiguous theatrical generated space with lots of reverb and all that kind of stuff. Your voice comes in. It's extremely direct. Here we have a very flipped version of that. You start with this gorgeous, like flowery bloom of like guitar and chorus, and then the next time through the Wurlitzer comes in, and so you're immediately kind of like wrapped up in this swirly pastel of the same exact chords, which are, I put the lead sheet up here. It is such a simple song chord wise. It's in 6, but it just goes like 4 chord to 1 chord, or I guess, would you say 1 to 5, or?
Yeah, I would say that.
1 to 5. So it goes through these 3 permutations and then back to the second one. But immediately the effect is so different. Let's go back to the newer version. Before we keep, I know this is so mean that I keep stopping it. My students hate this, that I do this. Before we go on, can you just talk about Michelle Cassis's voice for like a minute?
It's just whenever she would bring a new song to the band and I would hear it for the first time, it would just bring up so many emotions. Like to hear the debut of all the songs that she writes. Because there really is no sound like hers that I've ever heard. And then coupled with I mean, unfortunately, this is not one of her songs, but just each song of hers is like its own different universe. And and then to be living.
That's a different universe right there. What's happening?
Yeah, there's very distinctive voices too. Living, to have her as a roommate, and then next door neighbor Robert Z. Pietro, and then Tony up the street. Just every time I heard something new from them, it would immediately inspire me to write a song. And I was not thinking of myself as a songwriter, but the sounds that they all made would inspire me to do that. And this song actually came about. I had just recorded some bass on a song next door for DP for Robert Di Pietro, and there was just something in the sound of something else that he played me that just sent me home with my own chord progression going. And I just sat down, and this song was recorded within an hour after that.
I love that there's this whole like looping circle of energy going on between you living in a couple blocks radius of all these people, hearing each other's projects, working together, and then this song that then gets turned around and is performed in a second version by Ursa Minor. I'm going to go back to the Ursa Minor being Michelle's band that includes her on vocals and keyboards and some guitar also. And
I'm sure she was doing keyboards on. This was an era where she was really distancing herself from keyboard playing.
Yeah.
Now I should say about her keyboard and piano playing that she's an incredible classical pianist, and she's really now she's gone very deep into teaching piano, and my daughter and son have taken a couple lessons from her. And it's a lot like her singing. It's just everything she does in music is so intentional and clear.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's but at this point she was not into playing keyboards.
So she's moving on from keyboards and is becoming a guitar player. And
DP and I would be like, do you think we could play some keyboards again once in a while? And she just didn't want to do it. But now
really
the new stuff that she's writing, I hear keyboard coming back.
She's just not admitting it.
She very much gone electric on this record.
So she's playing guitar, Tony Scher's playing guitar, you're playing bass, and Rob Di Pietro's playing drums, and all of you are singing harmonies. Let's go back to this newer version. The whole band's going to come in, and it's going to reach its spot.
Wait for words to come. Wait for words to come. Speak your mind. Wait for words to come. Wait for words to come. Wait for words to come. Speak your mind.
the rhythmic side of it, which is not as big a deal in your original song, and I don't mean that as a slight, but I just mean like that's not sort of where we're focused. It's amazing how much DP and Tony Scher and his impressiveness bring into like just moving that beat forward. It's incredible.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can you just tell me a little bit about how it felt to re-record that song with all these guys in the second version?
Well, this particular song, I don't know if we all played it together or what, and I do remember the bass and drum part. I don't know if we'd already done it and we needed to do it again, Fleetwood Mac style, but the final. They were very big influences on us at that time, especially with their weirdest record, Tusk, which is, you know, it's funny for artists to be so influenced by that record, which had not so much commercial success, but we loved that record, and so we were very much into redoing things and doing things again and again. And I remember the last take of bass and drums, and that was in DP's old basement, or it's soon to be his old basement because he's about to move.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
and just
okay.
how great that felt, you know, when you just knew that was an exciting take.
You know, that's another thing that Elizabeth was talking about, that idea of being in the studio and just like grinding it out, like doing it again and again and again. And I think sometimes we tend to think about like revising and editing as like a chore, as like well, I'm going to do this draft and it's okay, then I'll do another version, and then I'll do the final version, and then I really hope that that's it. You know, we're talking about writing an essay, practicing a piece, I don't know, cooking a recipe, whatever it is, and that after that there seems to be like this fall off of like our egos feel wounded, like we have to try again and again. And in music it's almost the opposite. Like when you talk to real studio heads, that there's a pleasure and an ugly beauty in doing it over and over again until you reach that one where you feel like, yes, we've not only did we get it right, but we got it right because this version is the sum total of all of our experiences doing that. It's such a good lesson that music teaches us. And it sounds cliche, but it comes up so many times when you talk to people about their process.
Absolutely. I always like to have the time to do complete takes of a song. But I do accept that sometimes the best version is reached by editing together two songs where the first half has a good energy and the second half has a good energy, and then you just kind of, you know, let your ego take that blow as well. That you couldn't do a full great pass. Well, my family, here we are quarantined as the rest of the world is, and my family is going to need my attention in a couple minutes. But,
okay.
Was there anything you wanted to touch on before we sign
yeah,
off?
I'm gonna let's see. Well, we're gonna have to come back to you and have you on the program again because there's so many things to talk about. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about this.
Oh, after this intro, can we just forward to your trumpet solo? Because that's one of my...
No.
No, you have to, because that's one of my favorite bass instrumentalist dialogues. And that was something I remember that moment so clearly. This is Tony Barba's band, the Barbarians, but I really miss Tony Barba. But we did texting, and if he was going to come back and do some music, that probably won't happen now.
So this is Tony Barba, amazing saxophone player, awesome guy, band leader, and he led this band called the Barbarians. And then the Barbarian Horde was a bigger version of it.
But yeah, now let's go to your trumpet solo,
Okay, so
which
I'll tell
many
you.
people might not know as a trumpet.
This is I really was not intending to plug myself here, but it is an interesting story of how we recorded this. Do you wanna tell it, and then we'll play it?
I just remember we were all playing together. You're talking about the solo in general, or the record?
Yeah.
Well, I think you wanted me to kind of lay out and just play a few fills for the beginning, and then when you were ready for the groove to kick back in, you were gonna give me a sign. And so I just love the first part of your solo. Like, I'm clearly paying attention to you and you're paying attention to me, and I feel like there's a really great dialogue there. And then when we kick in to the big, the song is called Happy Day, so when you get to the big joyous arrival, this is one of my favorite recorded arrivals of myself playing with another musician.
Well, I'll add the little bit of information, which is that this was a phantom duo, much like we're in a phantom conversation because we're in two different places. This trumpet solo had some electronics, so we're going to record that separately. Like, after everybody was done, I went into a booth and plugged all that stuff in. So we just kind of decided to leave a space where the trumpet solo would be. And I remember distinctly standing in the horn section, like while you played, and this time went by, like 30 seconds or whatever, and just standing there and looking at you and singing what I imagined I would be playing, and you looking at me, and we just mimed this whole thing. And then somehow when I went back to play, you did exactly what I would have wanted you to do had I been playing it live, and it's kind of amazing that it worked out. But
now we have to listen to it. But I had forgotten. Yeah, now it makes sense to me why it stands out in my mind.
All right, so let's listen to the dialogue between electronic trumpet and bass here on Happy Day. This will be the ending to our interview right here.
But imagine. Oh,
go ahead.
Yeah, let's go back to the beginning. But then you'll have to imagine the information that Jesse said, where I wasn't actually playing along with this. I was just watching Jesse's face, telling me what this would be. So. Just
like you are watching me right now. So we play the intro live, and then the band just laid out while Rob and the rhythm section played, and I'm FaceTiming him. And then later, I went back and recorded the trumpet solo on top of what had already been done, and let's see how it turned out.
Campbell on the guitar, Brooke Martinez on the drums, Jesse Neuman on the trumpet.
That could have been a Michael Kiwanuka song. I think here's way on. So the band comes back in. Rob Jost, you're the band. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to have to come back. There's so much that you do that would be so helpful and inspirational and instructional for all kinds of people, music students and music appreciators to learn about. I know you got to get back to your family. Again, this has been Musicworks Real Music Talk Session 306 with the amazing Rob Jost. Rob, we wish you the best in this strange time.
You too, Jesse.
Please don't hesitate to reach out, and we will talk to you soon. I'm going to put links below to many of the things that Rob talked about, the different bands and musicians he's been influenced by and been around. And tell those kids they're extremely well behaved.
Thank you.
All right, Musicworks Session 306. I'm Jesse Neuman. You've been with Rob Jost. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care, Rob. Love you.
Lots of love. Over and out.